Ladies and gentlemen, give it up. Welcome the National President, Chief Executive Officer of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, DeMark Liggins, Sr. Amen.
Amen, amen. Good evening, everybody. I am so excited to be here. Vince, thank you. I actually told him, I was like, man, I don't really like introductions. He was like, man, you got to do an introduction like it's an NBA game. And I was like, well, we're going to do that. I need a rip-away suit. But I don't have that. I do want to, before I get into my remarks, I would be remiss without just saying thank you to everyone for being here. These events are not something that we take lightly at SCLC. It means so much that everybody comes in their presence from our board and you guys' tireless work. Obviously our chapters who are the lifeblood of what we do and why we do and how we do it. Shout out to our sponsors, FedEx and Nicole. She's not able to be here. Again, please say prayers to Darlena, and of course to Axel. But we were talking earlier and I was telling them how much it means to me that our sponsors are our friends. A lot of times when you do stuff like this, the people who support you is kind of a check. They're trying to be nice to your demography or whatever it may be. We are blessed to have sponsors who care about why we exist and how we exist. And I certainly appreciate you guys, not just for resource, but for your prayers and your presence. And I will say, y'all know, this convention was, it was hard because Dr. Lafayette was supposed to be here. And it just hits me that we weren't able to, give him his flowers. And I apologize, y'all know I'm a crybaby. Everyone knows that, it's not a secret. My sister's here, she'll tell you that. But I think the emotion is good, and I think it reminds you of what we do and why we do, and I'm so happy to at least be able to make sure that we did our part to make sure, people want you to move on quickly when folks pass away. People want you to move on to the next thing, but we're not here on our own. When you guys hear me talk about legacy, I mean that. Everybody in this room is here because somebody somewhere loved you and didn't know who you were. Somebody somewhere did something for your life. And Dr. Lafayette did that for all of us. All of us. I was talking to a young man while we were talking. I said, I want you to understand, we go to these fancy hotels now. We couldn't go into hotels if it wasn't for a Dr. Bernard Lafayette. We couldn't do all this stuff. We walk in the stores and get our stuff tailored. That wasn't the way the world was. And these guys like a Dr. Lafayette, like a John Lewis, they wake up in the morning and they poured into us before we even existed, if you're my age. And so I'm beyond excited and happy to honor all of our awardees. Inca's my sister in the battle, and what they do over at Selma for nonviolence is not just pivotal work, but I do want to echo what she said. I'm going to be mad at you if you go to Selma and don't leave something in Selma. It gets on my nerves. She's right. We go to that city every year. We show up. We take pictures. The city needs our help. They don't need our pictures. They need our resources, and they need our collaboration. So y'all make sure y'all keep looking up Selma Center for Nonviolence. Brother Hearns, I want to say thank you. I became fast friends with my sister Janine, but I think it's important that we always have color and context to what and why we remember our legends and what they were able to do at the History Center. It meant a lot to me because, again, I just think it's important. And of course, to his sister, who he had kept telling me about his sister, and then I kept hearing about his sister, but I had never got to meet her. And of course, I want to give her a shout out for not just helping us put this on. I know you've had your own set, right? Beyond your brother, I know you had loss, right? I don't want to start in your stories, but know that you are in my thoughts. You are in my prayers. I have to tell you, Pastor, she loves you. The reason I was able to walk in the room and pick you up by sight, she was like, I want you to go to YouTube right now. And I want you to look him up. And so I just want to thank everybody for being here. I will be as brief as I can with my remarks, but I do want to get into this because I think this moment is important, where we are. And as much as we are on Dr. Lafayette, I do want to share a few thoughts on what we were talking about with our convention theme, which is this pursuit, and what is life, and what is liberty in America. You know, I'm a big believer that there's something remarkable about America, even in the moments where our nation has been forced to confront its deepest contradictions, because our country was built around this idea that was much larger than the people who first articulated it. That human beings possess certain rights that were not supposed to depend entirely upon the generosity of a king, the permission of a government, or even the approval of the majority. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness and religious freedom, representative government, and the belief that people ought to have a meaningful voice in the decisions that govern their lives. They were extraordinary ideas when they were written, and in many ways they remain extraordinary today. They were ideas that were born because, amazingly, those people did understand what oppression was about. Our country was founded by people who were fleeing tyranny. They understood that there was a danger in becoming disconnected from the people who were supposed to govern it, and that those who believed that freedom should be protected. That's why I've always, I'm a military brat, I've always believed that our great American tragedy is rooted in the fact that we always knew better. Our nation always knew better. We just wouldn't do better. We knew language of liberty from the beginning. We placed it in our founding documents. We built a national identity around it, and then spent generation over generation, and we're doing it right now, struggling to ask ourselves, well, who should be allowed to experience the very freedom that we won't stop talking about? The distinction matters because it tells us something about the nature of our struggle as Americans. And our problem has rarely been the absence of principle. More often, our problem has been the distance between the principles that we proclaim and the practices that we permit. We know the logic of equality while tolerating inequality. We've known the language of freedom while maintaining systems of exclusion. And we've known the language of democracy while repeatedly limiting who could fully participate in it. And that is how we are here today as the SCLC. The Southern Christian Leadership Conference exists because people could read our Constitution and they could recite our Declaration of Independence, and we fought for our nation's wars. We built communities around our nation. We worship in our churches, but America always excluded us. And when a society is sitting there not knowing what liberty is, that is a function of, oh, well, maybe they need to be better educated. But when you understand liberty, but decide to distribute it selectively, then our work becomes organization. Our work becomes moral confrontation. Our work becomes institutional reform, and our work becomes courageous. That's been our work here at the SCLC from the beginning, and it remains relevant because justice becomes particularly durable when it no longer depends on one person's prejudice. It becomes part of the structure itself. That's why we are so impressed with the life and the work of Dr. Bernard Lafayette. He understood the importance that once injustice had become written into the way society operates, then it can reproduce itself long after the people who created the injustice are gone. That's what it means to institutionalize anything. You don't need the people, the system itself creates the injustice. It can live inside of laws, it can live inside of budgets, it can live inside our customs, and it lives inside our institutions, or just the assumptive, that's just the way things are. And if our injustice could have and has become institutionalized, then our response must become institutional as well. That's why the charge that Dr. King gave to Dr. Lafayette was so profound. Dr. Lafayette was to institutionalize nonviolence because asking whether nonviolence will become more than moral brilliance of a generation or more than a particular campaign. Could it be taught? Could it be trained? Could it be preserved, tested, refined, and passed forward? Could nonviolence survive the personalities that gave it viability and visibility and become durable enough to shape the next generation and the next generation and the next generation? And Dr. Lafayette spent his life answering that question from Dr. King with his works and his lessons. And ladies and gentlemen, as we think about this moment, we've got America, you've got Dr. Lafayette, where we are. I think it's important because SCLC is also turning 70 years old next year. And we find ourselves turning 70 years old at a time where the exact same issues that made us start up are coming back right now. And I look back and I think, well, man, why are we talking about Dr. Lafayette today? How does this all work? I think it's because you don't get an SCLC without people taking an individual life of courage. You know, a lot of folks that do this work, they do it because they love microphones. They love press conferences. They love their picture everywhere. But that's not how we got our freedom. That's not how we got our freedom. And I would also say that as much as Dr. Lafayette was a scholarly man, and he was, Dr. Lafayette was a man of faith. And it's important because he will remind you that we didn't get to where we are because black folks got so many degrees. We didn't get to where we are because black folks had such fancy jobs and fancy, you know, what are you, your corner offices. Yay for that. We got to where we are because we used to get on our knees. We used to pray to the man up high. We were talking earlier today, when you were Christ-led, it used to be led by Christ-led men who wanted more for the community than they were wanting accolades for themselves. Even to this day, things that bother me on the inside, I'm always excited about Dr. Lafayette because I love selfless leaders. We live in a world right now that they are so dependent on the fact that our leaders are selfish that they don't have worry about us. This is a real statement. And I'm trying to cut my speech short, so I'm trying to preach on you guys. But it's a real story. If you guys know who Steve Bannon is at all, and he talks about his worldview, he talks about his fear of these people that will combat white supremacy. He talks about the Arabs, he talks about the Asians, and he talks about our brothers and sisters from Israel, our Jewish brothers and sisters. And in his podcast, somebody was like, well, why didn't he talk about the black folks? He said, I'm not worried about them. They're not worried about us. And they're not worried about us because right now they feel like we are so distracted every day that we can't get our own thoughts together. They are convincing black leaders every day, hey man, I want you to get up and think about what Donald Trump did to you today. And there is a power in making sure that you speak truth to power. But one of the things I say all the time at SCLC is we shape and craft our next generation of leaders. We are not the Southern Christian Lamentation Conference. My job is not to sit around and lament all day about what somebody did to me. Our jobs as leaders is to make sure that we understand what we can do for ourselves. That's why we're proud to work with people when we talk about our programs with Breadbasket and 5 Bricks. That's why we're proud when we go and work with our church communities through our organizations like a Christian Lead. We focus on us because at the end of the day, we have to do more for ourselves than we are worried about what they're doing to us. And I mean that. And the reason I say that, and I'm going to close this out, when you put it all together, one thing that you rarely hear Dr. Lafayette had ever done was react to something in the media. Almost never. When they did Selma, it was a point of strategy. It was a purposeful adventure. So I ask everybody in this room today, look, we got a lot of roads ahead of us. On this other thing, I'm saying, I said I was gonna sit down, but I wanna be mindful to remind everybody that when Dr. Lafayette used to always talk about singing, I was telling Mr. Inca when we were in Selma, and I said, if you work with them, if you work somebody long enough, they will get on your nerves. That's a true statement. And because he wouldn't stop talking about singing. He was, DeMark, I'm worried about freedom songs. I'm worried about freedom music. Now, first off, I can't sing, so I'm like, well, I know you ain't talking to me because you don't want me humming nothing. But and I want to make sure I share with those of you guys who have never heard it. He said, I love the songs because the same songs that we learned in church when we were training were the same songs that we sang when we were marching. It's the same songs that we sang in the hospitals after they beat us. He's like, it's the same songs that we heard in prison. And it reminds me of that because this is a long-suffering business. That's why you gotta have some songs. See, he had songs because he understood that you're not gonna get this instant gratification. We are not in a time right now, and if anybody told you, you can tell them DeMark Liggins called you a lie. There ain't no pixie dust. It doesn't exist. Work exists. This country's gonna go through some hard times. We are living in hard times right now. We have went into a world where we had an indifferent government that let state governments be openly hostile to its citizens, to now the federal government has decided it will be openly hostile to its own citizens. We live in a world right now, unfortunately, where brothers and sisters that do not look like us are shocked and dismayed that the stuff that we always said is true. Yes, they will bring a police force into your community and shoot you and blame you for getting shot in the name of justice. That's the world we live in right now. And as we come out of that world and you find yourself trying to be inspired, if you wake up to say, my job is to be anything less than the example that Dr. Lafayette set for you, you're on the wrong path. You're on the wrong path. I tell people, lean into your own space. Like a Lafayette, be centered in your faith. He did work without wanting, almost to a flaw, the microphone, almost to a flaw, because he wouldn't get on the mic. But more importantly than that, he was completely selfless on everything that he did. If you haven't got his book, read the story about the day the man tried to kill Dr. Lafayette, and Dr. Lafayette immediately turns around and tries to save his life. Why would you do that? Because he was led by love. He was led by love. And as I close today, we'll end this now. We got a lot of evil facing us in our world. It's just what it is. Every single time the evil gets confronted with empathy, because I always say empathy is your love in public, right? Every time evil meets empathy, empathy is won. Don't let them convince you that this is some type of, we can't beat it. It's too much. They got too many things on their side. God ain't never lost to Satan. Not one day in his life. So we are people of love, we are people of empathy. We are not losing to evil anytime under our watch. Thank you.
Come on, everybody. Come on, President. DeMark Liggins, everyone. DeMark Liggins. Yes, sir.